Bienvenue à tous. This is our international press view here on France 24. In the papers is what we like to call it. Angela Yo is here with, well, we're starting with the further lurch to the left, I think they're calling it, in South America. That's possibly a good thing in some people's eyes.
Well, that's right. Well, in the Argentinian press, La Nación, there's an article about how this revolutionary election result came about. It is true that a lot of other countries in South America have lurched to the left, as you say. Well, this analysis piece tries to understand what has changed in Paraguayan society for this change to happen. Now, for decades, Paraguayans lived under an authoritarian regime, and for many reasons, I mean, they've seen other South American countries like Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia also go to the left and seen that that's worked for people there. There are movements by landless farmers, by indigenous people in Paraguay, as well as young people who haven't lived under the dictatorship that was in place in Paraguay for many years, who decided, well, why don't we give our government another chance by voting someone else in rather than just leaving the country. Last year, some 60,000 Paraguayans left the country.
What are they saying about the new man? Who is he?
Well, the new person is a former bishop, and he is very concerned about the needs of poorer Paraguayans, and that leads me to my next piece, which is an article from the Brazilian newspaper Folha de São Paulo, talking about one of the campaign promises of Fernando Lugo was to renegotiate the Itaipu Treaty. Now, this is about one of the world's biggest hydroelectric power plants, which is owned by Brazil and Paraguay. But at the moment, Brazil pays about $300 million for electricity, for Paraguay to supply electricity to Brazil. And Fernando Lugo says that that's a laughable figure. It should be 5 or 6 times that amount. And so he's going to try and make Brazil pay a lot more. And this sort of echoes what happened in Bolivia when President Evo Morales came into power and boosted up the prices for Brazil, paying that Brazil paid for natural gas from Bolivia.
And obviously echoes of what Hugo Chavez has done in Venezuela as well. And I presume Washington aren't particularly happy about what's going on, I suppose.
So, I mean, Brazil is one of the richest countries and is the main power in South America, and it looks, I mean, these other countries are starting to say, well, look, you should be maybe giving a little bit more money to the other countries that aren't doing so well.
Oh, so a common theme there in this sort of Mercosur South American region of left-wing governments trying to spread the wealth among the people. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. What's next?
Well, next is a decision by the Paris local council to make the Dalai Lama a citizen of honour. Now, this is a time of not very great relations between France and China, with anti-China protests in France and anti-France protests in China. And so this article from Le Figaro talks about that decision by the local council. It was the Paris mayor Bertrand Delanoë who was behind this gesture. But actually, all the Paris councillors got a letter from the Chinese ambassador telling them, please don't make this decision to make the Dalai Lama a citizen of honour. It will damage relations between China and France. The Chinese people feel very hurt. But actually, unfortunately, this plea didn't actually work. The council voted for the Dalai Lama to become a citizen of honour in Paris, and also for another Chinese dissident, Hu Jia, who's been jailed for writing articles against the Chinese regime on the internet, for him to be a citizen of honour in Paris as well.
Any hint that this has embarrassed Sarkozy then?
Well, we know that Sarkozy is going to be sending a diplomatic team over to China to try and calm things down a bit. So this move doesn't really help things on that front.
OK, and your final story, Angela? Well,
the final story is on a controversial way to highlight the plight of landmine victims. Now, there's a Norwegian film director, now this article, is from The Guardian, a British newspaper, talking about this beauty pageant that was set up by a Norwegian director. The first competition happened in Angola earlier this month for victims of landmines in a beauty pageant, and it's set to be run again in Cambodia about a year from now. And basically the director was hoping to highlight a social problem which is unnecessarily and very serious, but though other aid agencies have said it's sort of a kind of freak show, and there's no need to highlight this issue using this kind of strategy.
Freak show, but you can really see, Angela, how it would make a big impact. Thank you for that. That was our international press view here on France 24. Stay with us.